Hello, and welcome to the Special Ed Strategist Podcast. I am your host, Wendy Taylor. And this episode, we're going to delve into the intricate dance between emotions and executive function, a deep dive in how they shape learning. Whether you are new to special education or an experienced advocate, this episode will offer valuable insights and strategies to support your kiddos' educational success. Before we begin, a quick word from our sponsor, Learning Essentials. They are a team of specialized educators with advanced degrees dedicated to bridging learning gaps through dyslexia intervention, strategic writing instruction, and executive function support. Check out the link in the show notes for more information on how Learning Essentials can support your kiddos' educational journey. Now, I have a huge favor to ask. Please don't forget to hit that like, follow, or share button. Your support means the absolute world to me. It's such a treasure. And let's us keep this conversation going. And also check us out on Instagram. You can find us at Learning Essentials. So now let's go ahead and dive into emotional regulation and executive function. So executive function, often likened to the brain's air traffic control center. It's crucial for managing multiple tasks, organizing thoughts, and regulating behavior. However, its effectiveness can be significantly influenced by our emotional state. Emotional regulation, the ability to manage stress, is not a skill we are born with. So for kiddos, especially those with anxiety, autism, ADHD, early childhood trauma, sensory processing disorder, and other learning developmental needs, emotional regulation can be especially challenging. So we know that social emotional skills, including self-awareness, self-monitoring, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making are crucial for academic and life success. These skills provide individuals the ability to recognize and manage their emotions, develop empathy for others, establish and maintain a positive relationship, and make responsible decisions. We can always teach this and model this. So for example, for a teacher, you can incorporate social emotional learning into those daily routines and activities. You can start each day with a check-in where students can share how they're feeling. You can use right at the door, you can use symbols, you can have them point, you can have them dance. There's a lot of creative ways to do this. And by doing this, we're going to help build that awareness of emotions and encourage students to express themselves. As a parent, we can go ahead and establish routines and set clear expectations for behaviors. And we're going to encourage that open communication and validate our kiddos' feelings. By doing this, this is going to help demonstrate healthy ways to manage our stress and emotions. Emotional dysregulation, I want to take a second to talk about that. It refers to those difficulties in effectively managing and responding to emotions. So it can manifest as intense emotional reactions, difficulty in controlling impulses, and challenges in adapting to changing emotional situations. So when emotional dysregulation occurs, it can disrupt executive function, which is the set of cognitive processes that help individuals, again, regulate their thoughts, actions, and emotions that are there to help them achieve goals, whether that's in school, outside of school, in our communities, in our lives in general. So executive function is primarily controlled by the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain located just behind the forehead and tends to not really fully develop until we're in our mid-20s. This area is responsible for our higher order cognitive functions. That's including attention, working memory, and cognitive flexibility. When individuals experience that emotional dysregulation, the brain's focus can shift from the prefrontal cortex to the amygdala, the brain's emotional center. So this shift in focus can lead to difficulties in cognitive task, right? So if you're going from relying on the cognitive component to then the emotional component, you're thinking fight or flight and not having that grounded sense to make those decisions and to move forward. Emotional dysregulation can make it challenging to maintain focus on task as attention is drawn to the emotional stimuli. It can result in distractibility and difficulties concentrating on the task at hand. With working memory, Working memory refers to that ability to hold on and manipulate information in the mind for short periods. So it's like having this messy desk or having a desk and you're taking the lamp on your desk and shining it on to one thing. So emotional dysregulation can impair that working memory by interfering with the encoding and retrieval of information, making it difficult to retain information and apply it to tasks. In addition, cognitive flexibility, that ability to adapt to changing situations, switch between different tasks or strategies. When you have emotional dysregulation, this can hinder that cognitive flexibility by causing that rigid thinking patterns and difficulty in shifting attention or perspective. You can see where all of this is important in, again, the community and the school setting and in our home. So, for example, high levels of stress, which often accompany emotional dysregulation, can impair that working memory and attention. This can make it challenging for our students to focus on tasks, retain that information that they're going to need for future assessments or activities or requirements within the school day, and effectively complete those cognitive tasks. As a teacher, we want to help with coping strategies for managing the emotion. It can include talking about deep breaths, exercising mindfulness activities, or permitting that short break when you see a student that's feeling overwhelmed. And at home, as a parent, you can do very similar things, right? So we can practice that deep breathing. We can get an app on our phone, mindfulness exercise together, encourage them to take a break, removing themselves from the situation, maybe walk around the block when they're feeling stressed. And also, again, focusing on that communication of what they're feeling, what the student is feeling in that moment. And, or if it's too much in that moment, once they've had a moment to calm down, to come back so that you can then help bridge that gap from stressfulness to being in the moment and being able to communicate what's happening. So when we want to connect emotions to behaviors, we know that our behaviors is a way to let us know something's going on. Kids always do better when they can do better, but when emotional dysregulation is impairing their ability, that becomes tricky. So as an adult, we want to be able to help them build that capacity so that they then caught up on those lagging skills and that they're then able to really take part and take charge of what is needed to be successful. So children's emotional development plays that crucial role in their overall well-being and behavior. Many kiddos struggle to understand and explain their emotions, which then leads to those behavioral issues. If you're stressed, if you're scared, if you're overwhelmed, all of that is going to then play into us not being able to access our frontal lobe and our executive function. Recognizing and labeling emotions is that fundamental aspects of emotional intelligence. So students or kiddos who can accurately identify their emotions are better able to communicate their feelings and needs to that trusted adult within their environment. These skills are going to help our students understand how their emotions can influence their behavior and also the behavior of others. Difficulty in understanding and expressing our emotions can contribute to those behavioral issues for students. So a kiddo who is unable to articulate their feelings of frustration or anger may resort into that aggressive behavior, shutting down, tantrums. By teaching our students to recognize and to manage their emotions, we can help them develop more adaptive ways of coping with these difficult feelings. And when we talk about self-regulation, that's going to refer to our ability to manage one's thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in those different situations, right? So students who struggle with self-regulation may have difficulty controlling their impulses, following rules, staying focused. By teaching our students strategies for managing emotions, again, such as deep breathing or positive self-talk, we can really help improve the self-regulation skills, which then ultimately is going to improve their executive function and their success within the classroom and out. We talk about how emotion recognition and regulation, how that ties into social skills. It is crucial for those positive social skills and that development of that. So students who can understand their emotion are better able to empathize with others and respond appropriately in those social situations. And obviously, then that's going to lead to those better relationships with peers and adults. So if you're able to navigate social situations, empathize with others, if you're understanding those social skills, that's going to then develop these more positive relationships. Emotional regulation is linked to academic success. We can see that, right? So that if you are regulated, you're then more available to learn. Students that do not have the ability to regulate their emotions have a harder time with academic success. Again, they're in that fight or flight mode. They are not present in the moment. They cannot access the ability to learn when they're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, shut down, or acting out. So students that are better able to regulate their emotions are more likely, again, to be able to focus on the task, persist in the face of challenges. That's a really big one. And these are also, you can see how these skills are important for life success on the job, post-secondary, wherever life may take us. And I always try to think about how our students are in school and that educational impact and how that is going to relate to future education, employment, and independence. So it's always thinking ahead, forward thinking. Our IDEA law was very forward thinking when it talks about future education, employment, and independence. And we as educators, we as parents want to think that way for our children to set them up for success. So again, our students that have difficulties with emotional regulation, it can lead to that academic performance and overall well-being if we're able to help them with emotional regulation and effectively managing stress. In a classroom, using visual support such as emotion cards or charts to help students recognize and label their emotions, it can improve their ability to understand how emotions influence behavior and how that can create positive choices. We can start this at a young age, but we can also start implementing this with our older students across the board. It's extremely important to be able to identify our triggers, to then be able to put words to them, and to have somebody help model how to improve our regulating of our emotions, to be able to talk about them and to make a plan forward when it comes to academics and success and the whole educational experience, right? So as a parent, again, talking about the connections between emotions and behaviors, when they're having a meltdown, that's probably not the best time to do that, correct? We want to make sure that when they're calm, they're available, they're online with our conversation so that they can then see that connection. They're able to identify the triggers of the negative emotions and then brainstorm strategies for managing them. Our students are really capable of being able to say, this is what helps me feel better. This is working for me. I really like when you give me a countdown to my next transition. I like when you help me organize. I like when you're able to, XYZ. And so asking our students ways to help is really empowering them to start brainstorming ideas so that they feel empowered in this whole process. We always want to praise our kiddos for coming up with strategies, and oftentimes they come up with strategies that we think, whoa, that's fantastic. I'm going to start implementing that, especially as an educator or professional, with another student and see if that works well with them, or suggesting that to another student and see if they think that would work well. But thinking about this self-regulation and executive function, that bridge for that. So self-regulation skills are essential for that our students' overall development and success, again, in various areas of their lives. These skills are going to encompass that ability to manage, again, their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in a way that is adaptive and goal-oriented. So self-regulation includes both sensory and emotional regulation, which are closely linked to those executive function skills. So sensory regulation involves that ability to manage and respond to sensory input from the environment. Some people seek sensory input, some people avoid sensory input. So really being able to understand that so that you can manage that when it comes your way in the environment. So processing sensory information, sound, touch, movement. You can see all of these things within a school day. And children who struggle with sensory regulation may be overly sensitive to sensory stimuli, leading to difficulties in focusing and attending to tasks. Emotional regulation is that ability to understand, again, and manage your emotions. So if you have poor, ineffective emotional regulation, you may have difficulty controlling those emotions, leading to those outbursts, tantrums, shutting down, withdrawing. We've talked about this. So this will impact their ability to focus, interact with others, and learning activities that are presented to them in the classroom. So self-regulation skills depend on various executive function skills. So the ability to control your impulse and resist distraction, your inhibition, that's what that means. Children with poor inhibition may struggle to control their impulses, leading to impulsive behaviors that then interfere with their learning and social activities. We talk about working memory as an executive function, the ability to hold and manipulate that information in your mind for short periods. That again, that working memory is essential. We need that for following directions, solving problems, completing tasks. Again, we need that not only in the school, but our community and on the job. To kind of reiterate again, our attention, that ability to focus on that relevant information while ignoring distractions. So if we have poor attention, we may have difficulty with staying focused in class, completing the task, and what we like to call sustained attention. And to kind of back to our emotional control, that is crucial for managing stress, anxiety, and frustration. If we're thinking about inhibition, working memory, and attention, those are executive function. But then the ability to respond to different situations, to control our emotions, for managing the stress, the anxiety, the frustration, that we're able to then be able to perform on our activities in class and that what's required to us. So we really, again, want to teach the ability to identify and label emotions. We want to be able to teach coping strategies for managing difficult emotions. And I'm not saying don't have emotions. We certainly want to have emotions. We want to be able to identify those emotions. I feel happy. I feel sad. I feel scared. I feel angry. All of these are really important to talk about. And as a parent, you can model it. As a teacher, we model it. As a professional, if you're driving the car and you feel frustrated, talking out loud so that our kids can see, oh yes, my parent, my teacher feels these things as well. But look how they're handling it and providing that model for them. Giving that structured environment with clear rules, clear expectation, very straightforward, and so that individuals know what to expect. When I taught high school, my students came in, they knew expectations in the classroom were to be punctual, positive, and productive and prepared. Those were, I called them my 4 Ps. And every day we talked about that: positive, punctual, prepared, and productive, and what that meant. So it was a very consistent environment. Same with the home. If your student knows when they come in the door where their materials need to go, that they get a snack and then they jump into homework or however that's structured so that it's consistent, that takes a little bit of pressure off of what we're needing and allows us to then grow as a human. We want to encourage our kiddo to take breaks when they're overwhelmed, providing those opportunities to practice self-regulation skills in real life situations. That is really important. Breaking tasks into those smaller, manageable steps help with self-regulation because they're able to take breaks. They're able to see what's expected. There helps support working memory. Students don't feel overwhelmed. So it helps just initially kind of breaking down that element for them. As an educator, as a professional, as a parent, we're providing those clear instructions and offering support as needed. And that really helps our students grow into the individuals that they're going to need to be in life. We always want to encourage students to use tools like timers or checklists, again, to help stay organized. That's the executive function component. As a parent, if there's a space where they can have a distraction-free space for homework or study time or whatever they need, and then helping your kiddo break those tasks, you can help them. If it doesn't happen in the classroom, they need additional help, breaking those tasks into smaller steps, giving them that positive feedback and really working together collaboratively. And I always recommend that if your student is struggling with this, overly communicate, let the school know. If you think about our school day, right? You're either at home, in the community, or in the school, so that folks that are in the school know what's working well for your child in the community and at home, and vice versa. So it's really important to keep those lines of communication open. We know, I've talked about this just a second ago, that stress can impact that cognitive function. So if we, particularly on tasks that require focus, memory, and problem solving. So when a student takes tests, think about how you can help support those areas of focus, memory, and problem solving, so that you can then help them with that emotional regulation. High levels of stress can impair that working memory, making it difficult for students to retain that information and apply it to those test questions. It can also interfere with that attention, leading to that distractibility and difficulty focusing on tests. And ways that we can kind of help manage that for students is visualization involves that mental rehearsing of positive outcomes on performance. So really thinking about what a word means visually. Are you able to create a picture in your mind? Mnemonic devices, helping students learn mindfulness to focus on that present moment, such as deep breaths, scanning to reduce that stress and improve focus while taking a test, and thinking about cognitive reconstructing, meaning identifying and challenging negative thoughts and replacing them with positive. So I'm not very smart at this. Reframe those thoughts about test to help reduce anxiety. I think a lot of this can also go to helping students develop that time management skills for long-term projects. So again, breaking down, chunking out things, providing those regular check-ins, providing graphic organizers, all of this comes into play with our emotions. So helping students identify how they're feeling, but also helping them with strategies to eliminate or reduce some of that overwhelm, helping them with project timelines and milestones, and offering, as always, those encouragements as they manage those stress. And again, these are all life skills, right? So emotional regulation, executive function, we need those to build and maintain our healthy relationships. We need those to have that ability to understand and manage emotions, which will allow us to communicate effectively, empathize with others, and help us resolve conflict. And all of this comes into play when we talk about not only that academic area, but our educational experience, right? So our ability to focus better, to perform well in school, to keep organized, to manage time, to completing assignments, to staying focused. And all of this comes together with our mental health, right? So if we're struggling with regulating our emotions, we're more likely to experience anxiety and depression and mental health issues. So developing these skills can help prevent and manage the impact of mental health can have on somebody, and then thus improving our career success outcome. When you are a parent and you're sitting at the IEP table and you're thinking about the items that we just talked about, you can really go ahead and help facilitate the conversation of IEP goals. So if you have a student that's struggling with emotional regulation, you could perhaps say, given the challenging situation, this student will demonstrate improved emotional regulation skills by utilizing at least 2 self-calming strategies. And then you can break that down. You can front load it however you need. You can develop objectives accordingly. Executive function is also an IEP goal that we can always implement. Maybe it's given a multitask assignment that student's going to independently create a visual checklist, but they may not be able to independently create it at first. So you want to think about what can that student do, and how can we then create this sweet spot between what they can do, what we like them to do. So kind of pushing them, nudging them forward a little bit, but not completely overwhelming them and pushing them off the edge. So it's a nuance that comes when we're working with our students, whether they're in our home or in our school. And it's also a nuance when thinking thoughtfully about IEP goals and objectives. And then social emotional skills also can be an IEP goal, talking about identifying and describing emotions that are in the self or maybe others. And then you can, again, front load when needed and individualize that. Behavioral regulation. So when a student is feeling challenged, they're going to demonstrate improved behavioral regulation, maybe by verbally expressing feelings or asking for a break or using a break card or whatever we can do creatively to support that student. So to kind of sum up all my rambling that I'm doing today, I want you to understand and developing emotional regulation and executive function skills are crucial for that overall well-being and success in life. So by incorporating those strategies to support these life skills in both the classroom, community, and home, we're going to help our kiddos develop the necessary skills to navigate life challenges effectively. Again, future independence, employment, and education. So again, thanks for tuning in to the Special Ed Strategist podcast. I am your host, Wendy Taylor. I hope you found this episode informative and empowering, even though I was kind of rambling all over the place today. Remember, as a parent, you are that crucial person in your kiddo's life to advocate for them, to help them thrive, not only academically, but socially and emotionally, and thinking about this intricate dance between emotions and executive function. So hope this deep dive helped you today think about how that relates to your student and how you can incorporate IEP goals for success. Be sure to subscribe for more episodes. Join us next time as we continue to explore topics related to special education and parent advocacy. Until next time, take care. Keep advocating for your kiddos' success. Bye for now.